Hi, I'm Matt with State of Flux here to talk to you about Black Widow. This is going to be a spoiler discussion of this film. It opened this past Friday to excessively strong numbers for post-pandemic era filmmaking, or film releases. And for the first time ever, we got to look at numbers released from a studio who has a streaming service. And those numbers look to be exceedingly strong as well, and it had good numbers for international release. So this movie looks to be quite popular, at least as of its opening weekend. And in my non-spoiler review, it was very hard to discuss the film because a lot of the things, the qualities that I really responded well to and really liked, are tied so heavily into the narrative as it is told within that film that could potentially spoil somebody's appreciation of it, but also would spoil films that happen later on in the chronology, of the story, the in-order sequence of events. So this is going to be a spoiler-heavy, spoiler-laden discussion of Black Widow. And I want to start by saying that I really like this film. I thought it was a tightly wound espionage thriller that sort of unspools itself into this foreboding tragedy. You know what happens to her in Endgame, which is that she falls to her death. And the repeated motif within the film of falling really kind of struck me. It happens very early on in the film, even when Black Widow, meets her pseudo-sister in the opening scene. It has them doing the little flip, backstand kind of thing, and then they fall over later on in that scene. The Cuban agent that picks her up and sets her down into the caravan that will eventually take her into the Black Widow program, she gets dropped, and as she lands in the exact same pose that Widow herself lands in Endgame. Little touches like that, really something that I found striking, something that I really appreciated with that film. And the visual motif of falling is something that plays throughout the film. Anytime that Black Widow is really genuinely in danger in this film, it happens when she is falling. Early on, the first big action sequence that Scarlett Johansson is involved with is her and her sister running and grabbing onto the big pole thing, and then the other Widow comes, and what happens to that Widow? That Widow falls. And there's quite a bit of air peril with the helicopter, and then the whole climax of the film is with a falling station of the Red Room in the sky. Excellent visuals that accompanied that as well. But the repetition of that was very strong for me. The theme of family I talked about in my non-spoiler review was something that I really liked and dug, and I thought they wove that in nicely. What I really kind of meant by that is that you have the Avenger family that she talks about kind of often, and if you've seen those other movies, you know the characters she ties very close to are Captain America, in a weird way Iron Man, even though there's a lot of conflict with that specific character. And she's the kind of character that's torn between those two from Civil War. She's the anchor that is trying to bring those two characters to reconcile in Civil War. I like how they visually represent that with the three family members that you get to meet from her family. You have her alternate, her sister, Yelena, who's a representation of the Black Widow herself. And then you have the Red Guardian, who's sort of like a mirror of Cap, and then you have the mother figure, Melina, who is representative of the science-based knowledge doing lots of stuff with tech and stuff like that, not unlike or Iron Man himself. So you kind of have a posit between the two families and stuff, and the whole film is trying to reconcile her Avenger family, which eventually at the end of the movie she promises she's going to do, but she's also reconciling her home family that she grew up with for at least those few years, and trying to bring these characters together into a cohesive family unit. So I thought that was really kind of neat. I liked how family played out in both aspects of that. And the other thing that I kind of appreciated with the film is the villain. Now this is something that it took me 2 viewings to really appreciate. You have the bad guy, right? And I'm not talking about Taskmaster. I'm going to talk about Taskmaster at the end. But you have the villain character who on paper is very cardboard, very one note, and not much interesting there. Ray Winstone plays him and is quite good in the performance, even though he slips in and out of his accent. But I didn't dislike him when I watched it the first time, but I was just like, oh, he's going to be a kind of forgettable villain that Marvel kind of often gives us in their solo outings. But upon watching it a second time, I tapped into what the movie was ultimately saying and kind of using that character. And for me, the film seemed like it was attempting to take a stance with the whole Me Too movement. That character very much seemed like a posit for Harvey Weinstein, down to his look, his general appearance, and his behavior with these women, and an acting control until that fog lifts. So he played well for me. Even though he is one note, he very much has real-world comparisons that we have even within the past 5 years. Even when this movie was set in 2016, you have a character, or 2017 rather, you have a character that you can pivot to that with real-world significance about enacting control over these women, making them do what he wants them to do, and not blinking an eye when it comes to any form of recompense for his actions. So that stuff worked for me. Taskmaster, and I think I mentioned this in my solo or my non-spoiler review, I liked Taskmaster, and I liked what that character represented. I also liked the twist with that character, which has been something that a lot of people have not responded well to, and I get that, because in the comics, that character is utilized much better. However, implementing her in this film the way she is implemented kind of worked for me, because she acts... I like the whole thing is about family and having like a villain that can visually represent the family that is not represented in this film. Taskmaster is a way to do that. I thought that was kind of a neat way to go about involving Avengers without having the Avengers in this film. And I think the ultimate reveal with it, that worked for me. But then again, I am a fan of Iron Man 3, and the fake Mandarin thing in that worked for me as well. So I'm not opposed to when they change the comics, as long as it works narratively. And the Mandarin worked for me, Taskmaster worked for me. Where Taskmaster fails a little bit is they didn't tie her into the narrative necessarily well enough. She was used as a way to represent the Avengers that aren't there. However, they didn't find a way to integrate the Widow into that. And they had 2 places that they could have done this. You have Black Widow as your main character, and Taskmaster is the visual bad guy that is being marketed. You could have found a way to implement the character in such a way that this is a character that knows all the moves of all the Avengers. And Widow has always been there on the sidelines of those Avengers, not necessarily being ever in the forefront, and this could have been an excellent example of having Widow know how to destroy each of those Avengers, how to counter all of their moves without, but just standing on the side, never having to do that. But she knows that she could tactically take down each of them. And they could have done that, had like a Cap fight against Widow, and then she knows how to, she knows Cap so well that she knows how to get out of those moves and knows the weak spot, as well as Clint, as well as Stark, as well as Hulk. Like, you could have implemented all the fighting moves in a way where she knows how to break them. This is sort of similar to a couple of different comic book storylines that have happened in the DC side of the world. There's a great one, Wonder Woman story, where she has to take down the Justice League because she knows that there's like this impending doom. She can stop it. I think it was called The One or The Chosen or something. I can't quite remember the name of it, but it's a pretty good comic where Wonder Woman takes down Superman, Batman, Green Lantern, because she knows how to do it. She's just never had to. You could have done the same thing with Wonder Woman. Batman also had a very similar storyline, and I think either Grant Morrison or Frank Miller run where he took down each of the superheroes because he knew how. It's the same general principle. That would have been a better use of Taskmaster in a way to further develop the character of Black Widow, where you get to learn about her, find out that she is this master assassin. You can't take that assassin out of her. She, if she wanted to, could take down Stark or Cap or any of the Avengers if she so chooses, but she doesn't because she's part of the team and they're her family. That's how I would fix Taskmaster. Or, if you want to remove Widow, and you have the character of Red Guardian, and he's going on and on and on and on and on about how he once knew Captain America, and he was the better fighter of the two, and all this kind of stuff. And you're even going to write into the script where these two characters, Taskmaster is going to fight the Red Guardian, and it's going to basically be a giant brawl to the death, sort of. He never actually fights as Cap. He never fights Cap. Like, it comes at him like Black Panther and like Black Widow and stuff like that, but it doesn't, Taskmaster doesn't really come at the Guardian like Cap. You could have made that an empowering character moment for Guardian and realized that, like, while he's fighting, that he truly has grown because he doesn't care about the fight with Cap anymore. It doesn't have any weight or meaning to him. And that the family is where it's at. You could have found a way to utilize Taskmaster better than she ultimately was. However, I am a defender of Taskmaster. I like that she is there with her twist and as a visual representation of the family that isn't present in this film. Anyway, so those are that's my one fix. I would utilize Taskmaster in just a slightly different way. But I thought this film, by and large, was one of the strongest of the solo films in the Marvel lineup. It holds strong. It paints a clearer picture of the person that Black Widow is. And there is some dissent online from viewers who just said, like, yeah, this movie isn't bad, but it doesn't really feel like it's necessary. And I don't agree with that, and I think what they actually mean by that is not so much that it's not necessary, because I do think this film is necessary in getting a stronger sense of who Widow is and really earning her ultimate death in Endgame. What they mean by this doesn't feel necessary is it doesn't feel like it's part of the story moving forward. The Marvel movies have ingrained in us, in a weird way, a sense of television, where each, and it's not lost on me that they've actually gone to great success on television, but films are films, and films are intended to be films with a beginning, middle, and end. And several of the Marvel movies, especially in the past 5 years or so, don't have that. Iron Man 2 doesn't really have a beginning, middle, and end. It kind of does, but it doesn't. Age of Ultron really doesn't. It's meant to weave into what Civil War ultimately would bring, and it's meant to plant seeds for all these other movies, and I think that's kind of what people have grown to expect, especially with the immense success of Infinity War and Endgame. If you look at all the movies from really kind of Black Panther onwards. Black Panther has a beginning, middle, and end with a teaser for Infinity War built into it. The very next film was Infinity War. And right before Black Panther was Ragnarok. Ragnarok has an end, but then a teaser that leads directly into Infinity War. Skipping over Black Panther, Infinity War has no beginning. It's all middle. It has no ending. And then the very next film you got is Ant-Man and the Wasp, which is like a 90-minute movie with a teaser at the very end for Endgame. And then Captain Marvel was built as, this is the prologue you've been waiting for, and this is going to resonate when it comes to Endgame, and they have the little tag at the end of the film for Endgame. And then Endgame was a movie without a beginning, but it had its continuation, and it was all conclusion, and it worked really, really well. And then Spider-Man Far From Home kind of acted like an epilogue as well as a springboard for what will eventually come next. I think people were kind of expecting something like that with Black Widow, and the fact that it's not, it's purely like a middle story, but that middle story has a significant beginning, middle, and end that doesn't necessarily need to lead into any other things. It's outside of a tease into, yet again, Infinity War. I think that's where people were kind of upset, was that they didn't see any clear groundwork for what Phase 4 is going to bring. But I don't see that as a downside. I think some of these Marvel movies would do better to be their own individual stories. Black Panther is a fantastic movie because it doesn't necessarily tie into all these other stories, but it definitely does at the same time. And I think Doctor Strange is sort of another stronger one, or the very first Thor, where they are their own stories with completely clear beginning, middle, and end. And the ones that, at least initial viewings, seem weaker are the ones like Iron Man 2 and Age of Ultron, where they don't really feel like they're their complete story. They just feel like advertisements for what's coming later, but people have kind of grown to expect that. So yeah. I really liked Black Widow. I give this movie an insanely strong 3.5 out of 4, almost 4 stars, but the only thing holding me back is I feel like they had an opportunity to make this an incredibly strong and resonant movie, but the two villains, even though I liked them and responded well to them, could have been utilized better. The head of the Red Room could have been a little less cardboard cut out, and Taskmaster could have been utilized in a better way, which I've already explained. But otherwise, this movie's an insanely strong 3.5 out of 4 stars. It's my second favorite movie of 2021. What did you guys think? Were you disappointed with Taskmaster and in the interpretation this film takes with that character? Were you elated at seeing the character of Yelena brought to the screen? I never thought that was going to happen, personally, and I was really pleased with how she was used in the film. I actually liked her better in the film than I liked her in the comic books, so way to go, guys. And yeah, Black Widow herself, my favorite character. If this is the last movie that I get with her, hot damn if it wasn't a fantastic final journey to take. Thanks for watching, and yeah, stay tuned probably later this week, if not early next week, for my series review of Loki. Thanks for watching.